Different people view places in different ways depending on their experience of that place, their interests and their skills. For example, if you're new to a place or if you're familiar with it, that'll affect how you feel about the place and describe it. In your school, you may know the people inside that space well, making it somewhere that you're attached to. That may be because of your friends, your teachers, or the experiences you have there. The longer you've known it, the more comfortable you feel, and you probably call it my school. The more you feel that as an insider. Others may feel more like an outsider, like a student on their first day in a new school who doesn't know anybody or doesn't know the place well. These feelings affect how we think about the place. It's often our perceptions or our feelings that create our reaction to a place. Often it's only when we learn more about it that our feelings can change. Sometimes the way that a neighbourhood, village, town or country is shown in newspapers, magazines or on television can affect our perceptions of the place. Sometimes we hear bad news about things happening there, and that can create a view in our mind that the place is not very nice. The same happens in books and films. The author of a book or filmmaker cannot show you everything. They have to make choices. What they choose to put in their book or film shapes the way we think about the place. One of the best ways to learn about any location is to visit it. My geography teacher said you learn best about places through your feet. But even then you won't see everything. You'll make your mind up from a selection of images and even by the weather. This short film is going to try to show you what I think about the village of Rackheath on the edge of the Norfolk Broads. But the challenge I've set is that I can only show you 5 or 6 things, and then I'm going to try to summarise the places in 4 or 5 pictures that could be the illustrations from a book. I've gone for All Saints Church, Rackheath Hall, the old American Air Force Base, and the growing village. Prehistoric activity in the parish seems to be concentrated in the northwest of the village centre, clustered around the All Saints Church. This is a medieval village that appears to have been located about 400 metres northeast of where the church is now. This area is now heavily overgrown, but some house platforms, or remnants of the village, have been observed along what's called Dobbs Lane. However, the main settlement area subsequently moved south, which explains why the medieval Church of All Saints now stands alone in the fields. This beautiful 14th century church was rescued from dereliction by the local people and is worth visiting to see the numerous fine commemorative monuments to the wealthy parishioners of the past. The graves in the churchyard show a striking link with the Stracey family, who lived in Rackheath Hall a mile to the south. Rackheath Hall is a beautiful place and a little bit hidden for most people who only drive past the lovely park gates as they're on the way to Wroxham. The park existed by 1588, but was greatly changed in the early part of the 19th century, with the formation of new lodges and a long avenue leading up to the hall. The approach to the hall is on a winding road past the fields, and in the woods are the remains of Second World War buildings. Deer populated the woodland at the time when it was in its early stages, mainly for the enjoyment of the hall's residents. Now, the beautiful country house was built in 1852 to 1854 for Humphrey Stracey and the Stracey family. Like many great old buildings, Rackheath Hall has been converted into a number of apartments in a very beautiful setting. During the Second World War in the 1940s, the site formed part of the United States Air Force Base. The airfield was home to the 467th Bomb Group known as the Rackheath Aggies. Between April 1944 and April 1945, the 467th flew 212 missions, or 5,538 sorties, losing 29 aircraft in combat. The road names in the industrial estate, which grew up in the last half-century, were named after close associations with the American Air Force. The main road through, Wendover Road, is named after the place the 467th Bomb Group came from in America. Liberator Close is named after the bomber that flew from there, and Witchcraft Way is named after one of the famous aircraft. The control tower has been renovated and stands proudly on the edge of the old runways. The industrial park is on the site of what was the technical area of the old airfield, and several buildings from that time have been developed into the buildings on the industrial estate. There was temporary building accommodation for over 2,500 men in the wooded area around the estate. During construction, some 500,000 cubic yards of soil were excavated. Now that's probably enough. It could fill the whole of Carrow Road from the pitch all the way up to the top of the stands. And 14,000 yards of soak-away drains, that's 8 miles of drains were put in, and 500,000 yards of concrete was laid. Now that's enough to build a footpath a yard wide all the way from Norwich all the way up to the Lake District. The remains of the runways, which were mainly dug up after the war, can be picked out in the lines of trees, and part of the main runway still exists. Large parts of the site have been identified for future housing. Housing developments in Rackheath over the last century were mainly in several well-planned roads of bungalows south of Salhouse Road in an area called New Rackheath. In recent years, some modern housing developments have occurred between Salhouse Road and the old airfield. Now Rackheath is on the verge of a very large-scale housing development, since it's part of the Old Catton, Sprouston, Rackheath and Thorpe St Andrew growth triangle. The vision in the neighbourhood plan is that by 2037, Rackheath will be a small, attractive rural town with a village feel, developed in a way that's sensitive to its rural location and heritage. A major part of the development in the growth triangle may be an eco-community, possibly even an eco-town. The council intends to proceed with a small project of 200 homes on the land in the main area. Exactly how this development will happen is uncertain. What is certain is that the next stage of Rackheath's story involves large numbers of new houses being built. Now, I fully accept that if you know Rackheath well, you'll probably be cross with me by now for what I've chosen to focus on, and you might think I've missed the point about how great or not your place is, but that is the point. I was looking at the places with my interests and knowledge, and it may be very different to yours. I especially like the way places change over time. In other words, how their history changes their geography, and I recognise that is a bias I bring to describing and analysing places. So what do I hope that you've learnt from watching this little film? Well, firstly, to be critical of when you get information about places. Remember that the other person will always only give you part of the picture. And secondly, think hard about how you would make a similar film or a booklet to illustrate your place. But remember, you can only use 5 or 6 images. Choosing what to say about a place that's important and helpful is at the heart of what makes geography such a fascinating and challenging subject. And finally, what did I choose as my 5 pictures to illustrate Rackheath if I was going to do a booklet? The church, the hall, the airfield remains and the housing development.